The Area Public School District's task force may have found a solution when it comes to the district's 10-year facilities master plan. Their recommendation now heads to the school board where they will vote on it. Samantha Cavalli has more on what the plan entails and how it could shake up where your child goes to school.
During its meeting Wednesday evening, the Green Bay Area Public Schools Task Force finalized its recommended facilities master plan that will be passed along to the Board of Education for its review. The plan would close or repurpose a total of 11 schools, including MacArthur, Washington, Franklin, Lincoln, and Kennedy. Franklin Middle School would be repurposed as K-8. West High School would be repurposed to house the district's office and the John Dewey Learning Academy, closing the current district office building. A new 600-student elementary school is proposed to be constructed on the current Kennedy School site. Students at MacArthur and Keller would attend the new school. All of these changes and more are coming about due to aging facilities and declining enrollment in Green Bay. The changes will not be made until the 2024-2025 school year. The task force will present its recommendation to the board on May 8th. The board will then vote on its final decision during its meeting in June. A full list of the proposed changes can be found on our website, as well as ways for the public to express questions and comments to the board. Samantha Cavalli, Action 2 News, Green Bay.